So I don't really know what to do for because like we used to have cold opens that were supposed to be laughs
Sure.
for the intros. So what I'm thinking is we can all just like start laughing for no reason whatsoever. And then I can cue the music in.
Oh my gosh. You would.
I'm sly like that.
Good morning, afternoon, and or evening, everyone. And thanks for coming back and hanging out with us. As always, we're your hosts. I'm Nick.
Filling in for Kyle, I'm Seth.
And I'm John.
And we are three Catholic dudes who love to talk about movies. This is the Genesius podcast.
It's a special one.
It is a very special one indeed.
As you pointed out right before recording, we get to talk about Marvel unrestricted for around an hour. Around an hour.
We're going to try really hard.
Dear viewers and listeners, we're going to try.
So that's going to be really hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this is, I mean, technically this would be the second episode of our third season.
Yes.
But this is the first of our franchise portion of the show.
That's true. That's true.
So, I mean, last week you listened to us talk about Spy Kids 3D. Oh man,
I still can't believe we did that.
I mean, I can,
I'm so
but I
glad
can't.
that
I'm glad we did.
I'm glad that we.
I have
came through on that.
Yeah, no regrets.
That's like
not like any other reference that we make. We have to back up.
Oh gosh.
I'm gonna get a chair with Corinthian leather. I really. Here's the thing. I want it to be the thing. Can you like feel the difference? Can you be like, oh, that's Corinthian leather?
So,
Like, can you?
Okay, is it made from cows that are in Corinth, or is it like a factory that is in Corinth?
Brother, I got no clue. Nick, can we do some research? Let's see. Let's do a Google on Corinthian leather. Let me just check this out.
And that's right. We were talking about the previous movie versus talking. This is a Marvel podcast, and we're talking about something other than Marvel.
It's usually the other way around.
According to Wikipedia,
the most reliable source.
You know
it's
credible.
Yes.
It is a term coined by the advertising agency Bozell in 1974 to describe the leather upholstery used in certain Chrysler luxury vehicles. Although merely a marketing concept, it suggested a premium product, something rich in quality, rare, luxurious. In reality, it's the same leather used in most Chryslers, produced by the Radel Leather Manufacturing Company in Newark, New Jersey. Wow, that's
New
sad.
Jersey would have a town that sounds like New York.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
They would.
It's usually associated with the introduction of the 1975 Cordoba. It's an intermediate-sized personal luxury car. The model's celebrity spokesperson, Ricardo Montalban, is credited with indelibly linking the two. Yes. So there you go. You've heard it from us, which it's obviously real in every way, indisputable. Corinthian leather. So we're bringing it back, boys.
So is that like now an analogy for something that like they just make to sound expensive?
Yeah, you just
100%.
You know, it's like the term handcrafted.
Mm-hmm.
Or
you could say this is Corinthian fabric.
Yeah. Well, and you know how like you go to a restaurant or you buy something in the supermarket and like this dough is hand kneaded, hand shaped. And it's like, does it look like I give a crap? What? Like, I don't want any hands touching this thing. Like to COVID people, the term handcrafted is like a dirty word, you know?
I'll say.
So I don't know. But yeah, there's some other stuff from this movie that we'll get to in a bit. But yeah. What is actually the movie that we're not talking about Spy Kids?
No.
All right.
If you want to listen to us make fun of Spy Kids,
go back to
more
that.
or less.
Yeah, no, get that out of here.
We're talking about this.
That's screen time is more than it deserves.
We're not talking about
This one.
No,
not that one.
Yeah, that one. We are talking about
Iron Man. We are the first of our franchise spinoff.
Yeah.
We are focusing on specifically the Infinity Saga of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
The beginning
Yes.
of it all.
Yeah, like this is like the OG, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
The OG of the MCU.
Directed by
This is a film that is directed by Jon Favreau.
Yeah.
Of Elf.
Of Elf, of The Mandalorian. He created The Mandalorian.
Well,
Yeah.
Okay. Was this his first movie after Elf? Because wasn't Elf his first movie that he directed?
I can't remember.
You'd have to IMDb it.
Also, it's important to note that Jon Favreau is actually in the movie as well.
Correct.
He
Is in the
plays
movie.
the recurring character of Happy Hogan, who is Tony Stark's bodyguard, and he's one of the comedic reliefs of the movie.
Not in this one, though.
Yes, he is.
Not really.
He doesn't do a lot in this one. It's mostly just the one race scene.
That's
right?
true. Yeah, he's just kind of like in the first movie. He's just
I'd
kind
say
of the bodyguard.
Iron Man 3, I think, is when Happy like really steps more into the spotlight.
He kind of almost dies. He's not in most of the movie.
Yeah, but he has the whole like head of security bit with the long ugly hair.
Yes.
We'll get to that in about
I don't know how many weeks.
it'll
be a while.
it'll be a couple months.
Probably Q2.
Couple months. Yeah, definitely Q2.
Yeah, writers Mark Fergus, Hawk Ostby. Is that Ostby?
Art Ostby, Art Markham, and Matt Holloway.
So interestingly, at least from what I heard of the behind the scenes of the movie, there was a lot of just like making up the script on the day in some cases, or making up maybe lines, doing rewrites. I don't know if that's true or not.
I kind of believe that.
It makes sense, especially for the comedic aspects of the film.
Sure.
So he did Elf, and then he did Zathura with Space.
That's
Ah.
right. I
And then
forgot
he
he
did
did
Iron Man.
Zathura.
Zathura
Those were the movies. that he-
Zathura was 06, right?
05.
05. Okay.
I've
Yeah.
actually never seen it.
I saw it once, I think. It was very strange.
I feel like it's a movie that would appeal to me.
Isn't it
I've
like one
never
of those?
seen it.
Isn't it like one of those
We can
board
cover that
game
in the
movies
show.
like Jumanji?
Yeah, it's like Jumanji but in space.
Yes.
Jumanji in space.
No, that's literally
sounds-
how I've heard it described.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway,
So we got a release date of May 2nd, 2008.
this May will mark 15 years for the MCU.
Wow.
Isn't that bonkers?
Wow. That's pretty crazy.
Man,
It's been a
how
long
far
time.
we've come.
In some cases, how far we've
Just
fallen.
think.
This is true. I'm not going to argue that.
I first watched this movie in theaters in high school.
Wow.
You really are an old fart.
There we go.
Yeah. Wow, you forgot it last episode.
I did.
You
I
did.
can
You're
own up to that.
slacking. You're slacking.
Says the one who forgot about the cat stuck in the tree.
Look, Meow. There we go. I love you just reaches over and he's like, I know where it is on the soundboard.
It's the first one.
Yeah, he's got a point. Well, there's one on this page too. Meow.
A little
wow.
slower.
We just have a whole page that's just meows.
I mean, if we want, you're joking.
no. Actually, yes, I am this time.
I was going to say.
We can make it happen.
We
though.
could add an even slower and just go like, meow.
Oh God, no. Please don't. Unless they're just like Puss in Boots sound bites.
Meow. For you, baby, I could be.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
We
what I was
didn't even
thinking.
make a reference to that yet again. Spy Kids with Antonio Banderas.
Yes, that's true. Yeah. All
That
right.
was that Spy Kids 3D was so last week.
It was,
Yeah.
so last week.
So
So
last week.
So,
Last
so
week.
5 minutes ago for us.
Yeah, and you know what? You know what's crazy? The budget for this movie was higher
man.
than what Spy Kids made.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
You say it was 190 something million?
Just kidding. You're right.
Yeah.
You're right. I'm
Well,
down.
this one
close.
made way more money than Spy
It
Kids
did.
3D,
This had a
so-
budget of $140 million and a box office of $585.8 million.
Yeah, made its money back for sure.
Oh, yeah. I don't see how it, I mean, it was kind of hard for it not to.
Yeah, and the critic score, audience score, they're pretty close. The critic score is 94%. On Rotten Tomatoes, the audience score is 91%. And yeah, it's a
A very well received movie.
very well received movie, a very solid movie, and I think it's traditionally regarded as like
Top
really-
tier MCU.
top tier MCU. It's up there as one of the better films, and it also established some of the cons. Right? It had I know most people talk about the villain, right? The villain is, pretty shallow
Yeah.
in some
I
ways.
mean, you have the dude being the bad guy. So,
What I like,
Yep.
what I
Thank
like,
Bridges.
yeah. Thank you for that, Sean.
I guess could say we were burning bridges.
Wow.
But no. So
wait. You don't even.
I'm on the page 3, bud. You want applause? Do you want crickets?
This.
Oh, gotcha.
There you
All
go.
right.
I had I was the one that was singing crickets.
Wait, you have the crickets on the other one.
That's actually
probably
better.
more accurate.
That's better.
That's better. So he plays the villain, and he, I will say, he does not have world-ending plans, right?
No.
I mean, he kind of
it's not
does.
like he just
but
wants to
they-
watch the world
I think
burn or
he
anything.
should have been in future movies.
Yeah. One thing they did a really good job with in these first couple of films is not having like the world-ending stakes. They're big stakes. They're not world-ending. Like I think the most you got up to Avengers was that the
Captain
Hydra-
America?
Yeah, in
Captain America.
where the Red Skull wants to like blow up the U.S. basically.
Spoilers.
Well, I don't think we really need to.
This is a bit of a retrospective.
It's a retrospective.
Yeah.
What is the USCCB consensus? Nick, do you want to read it, or do you want John to read it?
I got it.
Cool.
So the USCCB had to say this. A sleekly effective science fiction tale about a devil-may-care playboy weapons manufacturer, played by Robert Downey Jr., who, after being captured by an ambitious Afghanistan-based warlord, played by Farhan Tahir, in order to build a replica of his most advanced product with the help of another captive and scientist, Sean Tube, I think that's how you say it, instead constructs an impregnable suit of armor, escapes, and begins to reevaluate his life with the support of his loyal girlfriend. That's not right.
Incorrect.
That's incorrect. USCCB. This is not Friday. Pepper, played by
Potts.
Gwyneth Paltrow. And despite the doubts of his junior partner, Jeff Bridges, and military liaison, Terrence Howard, not Don Cheadle,
Yep.
in between the impressive special effects, executive producer director Jon Favreau's screen adaptation of this popular comic book series charts its main character's conversion from callous genius to dedicated defender, non-graphic sexual activity, torture, a graphic medical procedure, sci-fi violence, occasional crude language, a brief profanity, sexual humor, and innuendo. A3 for adults, PG-13.
Yep. That sounds about right.
Yeah.
Although I should point out the typos in the USCCB. This was translated from the original Latin. That was.
I hope that's a joke.
that is very much a joke. I'm messing with you.
I don't even know what some of the stuff
It's
would
mistranslated.
Like what would comic book be in Latin?
Oh goodness. Well, I mean, later on, there's a character who supposedly speaks Latin, but in Iron Man 2.
Oh, yeah, I suppose.
But it's more of a flex than anything.
That's like most of that movie.
Yeah. No, so they obviously misspoke. It's not Friday. It's Pepper.
That is so odd because Friday is a character, but
Not till
Not
like
until
Age of
after
Ultron.
Jarvis.
Age of
Yeah.
Ultron
Yeah.
is when we
That's-
first
that's
get Friday.
weird. That,
Yes, that's correct.
Mhm.
Is that true? Yeah. Yeah, it is.
Yes.
So yeah, should I just dive into the plot synopsis here?
Yeah.
Go for it.
All right.
Well, I
I'm
mean,
gonna-
unless there was anything else that's weird from this. I
No,
don't
that's
know. I
like
think it's pretty accurate.
that's like the one. Yeah. Like
the only thing is okay. This movie made Iron Man popular.
oh,
He was
yes.
definitely a
He's
B-list
a B-lister,
character
yeah.
before this.
Yep.
So that's the only thing.
Yeah, you got a good point. This
Ooh.
movie,
I'm gonna run and grab something, but yeah, you get started.
he's grabbing the Lego thing, isn't he?
I'm not I'm actually grabbing something like relevant to this episode.
Oh.
Oh.
Okay. All right. I mean, we can just keep riffing here. I mean, what do we do? How do we riff? Do we just start pressing soundboard buttons and see what happens? I mean, we got the air horn here. You want to press that? Very nice. Very nice. We got the record scratch, right? We're just going through the soundboard right now. Yeah.
This is gonna stay in the final cut, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, this is quality entertainment right here.
So what is this book that you're looking at?
So a few months ago, a friend of mine, Tracy Langan, if you're listening or watching, shout out to you. She made me aware of this book here called Hollywood Heroes: How Your Favorite Movies Reveal God.
Oh.
That's cool.
Yeah, and they have chapters about some popular characters. So they have chapters on Captain America, Iron Man, Harry Potter, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Batman, and Wonder Woman. And they connect all of that to what made Jesus the ultimate hero.
Yeah.
So I bring this on because there's a whole chapter on Iron Man.
Wow.
And there's some stuff in here.
There's some nuggets.
There's some really good nuggets in here.
Are we going to get excerpts from this book?
We very well might.
We could do an audiobook recording.
Hello there.
Oh, God. Let's not bring in the franchise. Let's not bring in another franchise to another franchise episode.
We already did that with Spy Kids.
We did. Shoot. Carry on.
All right. So when I was reading through this, one of the things that stood out most to me was how this movie was essentially a parallel to Robert Downey Jr.'s, like the actor who played Tony Stark. It's very much a strong parallel to like his like conversion.
Oh,
because he was living like not so great a life.
He did not have the best reputation as of the filming of this movie.
Yeah. So I'm trying to find it in here. So it's on page 45 here on Hollywood Heroes. So there was some. So I think Robert Downey Jr. like actually connected with the character Tony Stark, which is why he played him as well as he did.
Yep.
Here are some similarities that you could connect between the two of them. So both had famous fathers.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So Downey's father was an actor, writer, and director. Tony Stark's father was part of the Manhattan Project.
Yeah, Howard Stark.
Yep, which helped the creation of Captain America and was one of the founding members of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yep.
Both rose to fame early on in life. Downey acted in his father's films at an early age, and Stark was a child prodigy, graduating from MIT at age 17, and he inherited his father's company at the age of 21, which is said at the very beginning of the movie, which is the exposition at the beginning of the movie.
I thought that was a really good like overview of
the exposition was really well done.
And I wonder if like some of the images that they used of like Tony Stark being younger was just like from previous movies. RDJ did.
I wondered that myself.
That's a good point. Yeah, I wonder if they would use those clips.
I mean, later on, that's how they do how they made him look young in Civil War. Anyway.
So both had notable public missteps. So Downey was nominated for an Academy Award for his role as Charlie Chaplin in 1992, but then spent much of the next decade in and out of legal trouble due to his persistent drug use, which started when his dad gave Junior marijuana at age 6.
Oof. Wow.
And he was arrested multiple times, fired from multiple film and television roles, and spent over a year in prison. Now, Tony starts off the first Iron Man movie essentially as tabloid fodder, claiming to have slept with numerous women while also drinking and gambling to excess, which he quotes, "Give me a scotch, I'm starving."
Yeah, he's playbook.
And
his Playboy kind of guy.
And his alcohol use, which we'll get to in a few weeks, but his alcohol use almost sinks him completely in Iron Man 2.
Yep.
So we'll talk we'll talk more about that once we talk about Iron Man 2. So that's like 5 episodes away, probably 4 or 5.
Couple.
And then both recovered to do spectacular things. Sober since 2003, Downey is now the second highest grossing box office star of all time, both domestically and internationally.
Wow.
And Tony channeled his failures to create the Iron Man suit and become a servant who saves the world from evil.
Although he still has plenty of battles with his own ego and narcissism.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, of course. But
and I think that's one thing to say about the Tony Stark characters. That's like you kind of see his progression throughout the movies. Like that's how like his character development is versus just like there's a turning point in this movie, but it's not like he's completely changed.
Right. In this movie, it's really clear what the turning point is. Like, because at the beginning, he introduces the Jericho missile. And he's
should I do the plot?
Oh, yeah. a quick.
Really quick.
All right.
We're at 20 minutes.
Yeah, we are. So Tony is in an ambush. They get ambushed in the desert, and now we get an exposition dump talking about who Tony is. He is a billionaire weapons developer, living in pushing forward the legacy of his father, Howard Stark, who helped develop the atomic bomb. I was a part of the Manhattan Project. And so he is living the playboy life of gambling and sleeping with women, general like billionaire mishaps. And he is demonstrating the Jericho missile, which is basically like a separated, like multiple warhead thing.
It's one giant missile that turns into a bunch of little baby missiles.
Yeah,
It's like destroying a mountainside because like at this time they're trying to root people out of mountains.
Yes.
That like are living in caves.
So this is still very much like built on the American attitude, intervention in the Middle East kind of thing.
Yes.
And so all this is introduced, and he has this demonstration of the Jericho missile, and then it goes back to the convoy ambush, and one of his own weapons explodes basically in front of him, and a doctor that is being held captive by the terrorists that attacked the convoy puts an electromagnet in his heart, and or basically in his chest, that is keeping the shrapnel from reaching his heart and killing him. And so the terrorists want him to build a Jericho missile. They have all of these other weapons that Stark Industries, Tony's company, has made that they have gotten a hold of somehow. And they want him to build a missile, one of these missiles for him. And they claim that they'll set him free when he does. And there's an implication that they won't. But anyway, he spends the week not actually building this missile. It looks like he's working on stuff, but he first builds a miniaturized arc reactor that he's inspired to create when he's being like waterboarded, essentially.
It's like closer to months, actually.
Is it? It might be.
They say in the movie that he was like gone for 3 months.
Oh, 3 months. Yeah, that's right. You're right. And so he builds, first of all, a miniaturized arc reactor, which is a power source
in a cave with a box of scraps.
No. You can't just beat me to that.
Tony Stark was able to build this in a cave with a box of scraps.
How the hell did you manage to get that?
A magician never reveals his secrets.
That line is so.
It's literally the best line in the movie.
I can't believe that's on the soundboard.
I'm glad we're recording this. I want to watch his face back later. So he builds this miniaturized arc reactor. Nick's just losing his mind over here.
I'm losing my crap right now. That's so good.
He uses this to power the electromagnet, but he also designs it to power a suit that he builds to escape from the terrorist group. They are the 10 Rings. That's what they call themselves. And so the doctor that saved his life and has been his assistant through this captivity sacrifices his life, telling Tony not to waste his. And so Tony escapes. He's rescued. He shuts down weapons manufacturing, which angers his longtime business partner, who is also his father's business partner, Obadiah Stane. The dude, Jeff Bridges.
The dude abides.
Jeff Burning Bridges. So the whole first part of the movie is the journey that Tony goes on to develop this Iron Man suit from the original version that he built in the cave.
For the purpose of escaping.
For the purpose of escaping, and now he's building it so that he can go around the world and basically take vigilante justice and destroy these weapons that, as it turns out, Obadiah has been distributing under the table to terrorists to bolster their profit margins. And so, as it turns out, Obadiah was also responsible for ordering the hit on Tony. Originally, the terrorists were supposed to kill Tony, but he also appreciates that Tony developed this arc reactor, and so he spends the movie chasing this miniaturized arc reactor, which Tony refuses to give him. He loses it on one of the engineers, which results in the iconic line that we just played back for you about a minute ago.
Which actually comes back That
Comes back.
That assistant comes back much later.
Much later. But we're gonna leave that for now. So he also basically eradicates the remainder of the 10 rings and steals the armor that Tony built in order to develop his own version that he points out is less conservative, which is to say more heavily armed and bigger. And so Tony, meanwhile, goes on his first adventure. He goes on test flights with his new suit, goes on his first mission to eliminate the Jericho missiles that have been distributed to the 10 rings.
Such a cool scene.
It's like the really cool fulfillment scene, like hero fulfillment scene that everyone loves to watch in that movie. He also is kind of like flirting on and off with his assistant, Pepper Potts, played by Gwyneth Paltrow. They kind of start to develop a rapport. They clearly care about each other. And at one point, she almost quits on him until he points out that he's trying to now actually do something good for the world.
It's actually one of the best lines in the movie.
Yeah. He says, I shouldn't be alive.
I shouldn't even be alive unless it was for a reason. I just finally know what I have to do, and I know in my heart that it's right.
Yeah.
That's the quote that it has on your little.
Yep. That's
proof that Tony Stark has a heart.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's that, but I mean I shouldn't be alive unless it's for a reason.
Yeah.
It's like the.
Yeah, it is. It's basically that line is like the thesis of the movie.
This movie is the classic hero's journey story.
Yeah. And so he has gone on his first adventure with the suit. He's planning more missions, but Obadiah enacts his plan. He ambushes Tony. He steals the miniaturized arc reactor from Tony.
The perfected one.
Yeah. Side note, on Tony's first mission, he crosses paths with the U.S. military who try to shoot him down.
Oh, yeah.
This was great.
This brings the military, the Air Force's liaison, Rhodes.
Although you wouldn't recognize him as Rhodey in this movie.
Yeah, because he's played by Terrence Howard. And so that sort of relationship develops where the military has to cover up for Iron Man's activities because they don't know what's really going on.
Mm-hmm.
And so Obadiah steals miniaturized arc reactor to power his own suit. Pepper goes along with agents from S.H.I.E.L.D., who are also first introduced in this movie as well, specifically Coulson.
It's funny though. It's like for the longest time they like keep trying to use the whole name.
Yeah,
and then they're just like, just call it S.H.I.E.L.D. at the end.
I have a feeling
that was, back in the day, that was actually like a big reveal.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
Well, and clearly they were using the term S.H.I.E.L.D. beforehand, so I just kind of explained it away as like that's their way of kind of maintaining cover through just boring people. Like if you start listing out some big agency name, people will stop listening by the third word. And so they probably they clearly use S.H.I.E.L.D. in previous chronological events before that. But regardless, so there's a final battle that happens where Pepper goes with S.H.I.E.L.D. agents to arrest Obadiah, but he gets in his suit. And Tony shows up with his old arc reactor.
This isn't said in the movie, but it is very famously known to be the Ironmonger suit.
Yes, the Ironmonger suit.
Yep. He does say it. There is one line that Obadiah says.
You're right.
Like,
they do.
We are Ironmongers.
Yeah, we're warmongers or something like that.
Yeah.
And so Tony shows up in his suit, which is low powered because he's using the old arc reactor, which is already kind of dead a little bit. And they have a big battle, and eventually, with Pepper's help, Tony defeats Obadiah, kind of at the cost almost of his own life. And his suit is kind of like falling apart. And so eventually, Coulson, the S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, tries to sort of like create this cover for Tony at a press conference, like just read the cards. You were on your yacht. You have a bunch of guests with sworn statements saying you were there. Just stick to the script. And Tony, in like his classic narcissistic attention-seeking kind of behavior, finishes the movie by saying, "I am Iron Man."
This was like an early pinnacle of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yes.
The thing was like, okay. At the time, so this comic book character was kind of B-list. But like the thing is, each comic book character, one of their things is that they have an alter ego.
Yes.
Like that is always like their go-to thing that like Superman is Clark Kent. Like they have all these things.
And this is
and like Iron Man's that was his bodyguard. That was the storyline for the comic books, like at that point.
Oh,
and,
was it really?
And they like when he said that line, like people just like lost. Like the first time, like when it first came out.
It defied.
They're just like, what the heck? This is not how comic books are supposed to go.
Basically defied everything that makes a superhero story a superhero story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he's just like, nope, no alter ego. I am Iron. And you're just like, okay.
Well, and so the whole MCU really deals with the consequences of this because his reveal that he is Iron Man essentially, Vision points out later on, invites all of these other challenges, all of these other explosions of supervillains and superheroes, which in classic like comic book fashion is not true because of all of the prequels and stuff that have to happen to show like, no, there were actually other superheroes that existed before this, which to me, I just find problematic about comic book styled storytelling in general. That they always find a need to like go back in time and tell a story before the story. So I would say if there's one flaw, it's not with this movie, it's how the MCU and like comic book storytelling in general will devalue its own foundations by then trying to go back and add in more stuff before it.
Well, the thing that's like really interesting is just like how and like what environment this movie was released in. Like in the sense of like, do you recall at all what like early 2000s superhero movies were like?
I mean, Spider-Man.
Like the original Daredevil.
Oh, I haven't seen. I haven't seen that one.
Stuff like that, where it's just like this was a change of pace in the sense of like they were trying to be more realistic with it, in a way that like he builds a suit. It's like he doesn't have superpowers, and like this is like Marvel's kind of like entry of like, okay, we're gonna redo it a little bit differently.
Yes,
and the thing is like that I think that I appreciate so much about this movie is that it sets up so many things, but it doesn't like slap you in the face with it. Like they're just like small hints at like, oh, here's something that we may talk about. Like
especially the end credits scene.
I would say the end credits scene is the most blatant, probably.
Yeah.
Because it's the one where you got Samuel L. Jackson.
I'm here to talk to you about the Avengers Initiative.
Yeah, he's like, I'm going to talk to you about the Avengers. And that's supposed to be the moment that everyone was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And yeah, most people were like,
it's a good singer too. It's a really good singer.
Because no other movie series has done anything like that prior to. I mean, there was like an Avengers that was like in the 60s or something, but it's not to this level.
No, not at all. So it's a really, I would say in terms, it lays probably, I would say that if the Iron Man movie did not do as well as it did, it would not have been a good foundation for the MCU, and the MCU may very well have not happened.
True.
And so, because it's clear that a lot of the success and a lot of their ability to keep pushing this story forward was a result of these successes that happened along the way. I think Iron Man was a big boost moment.
The Avengers
was the next big boost moment. And then there was a little bit of a lull just for Thor: The Dark World, because that was the moment where everyone's like, all right, this is really mediocre. We're clearly getting tired of Marvel. And then they're like, nah, Winter Soldier, Guardians of the Galaxy.
Well, okay, but I mean, we'll talk more about this when we get there. But like Guardians was
phenomenal.
A shocking surprise.
Really?
Because that was like, okay, like if Iron Man was B-list, the Guardians were like C.
Oh, they were like D-list.
It was like nobody even heard of them. Like okay.
It's like, who the heck are they?
Yeah.
And now it's like we're getting a third Guardians movie in a few months.
And we got a holiday special.
That holiday special was good, man.
I haven't seen it.
But I think it just goes to show like how much of a risk this movie actually was. I think.
Yeah. Well,
because like for instance, like this was before Disney bought Marvel. Like Marvel was tanking hard. From
tanking
the 90s.
so bad that they had to they sold the Fantastic Four and the X-Men to Fox and Spider-Man to Sony and all that.
Yeah.
But I think I think part of that risk wasn't just the fact that Marvel was just on a low, but people were skeptical about Robert Downey Jr. stepping into the role of Tony Stark.
That was a huge risk. Jon Favreau was a big risk too, because like he'd never done an action movie before this. He just done well, I mean, I guess the Xanthera, but he wasn't.
I think
very
Zathura
well known.
was more of an adventure movie than an action movie.
So
but like Elf,
the previous one being
Elf is like one of the cheeriest, cheesy Christmas movies you're ever gonna see. It's a great movie, but it's not Iron Man.
Yeah. So this is definitely like it was a risk that paid off so much.
Oh yes,
Yeah, and this, keep in mind, this 2008 was like the renaissance of this time period, was the renaissance of superhero films, because we also had The Dark Knight, and 3 years prior we had Batman Begins.
The year prior to this is gonna sound wild, but the year before Iron Man was Spider-Man 3.
Yeah, that one was much less
Right,
successful,
but you
it
get my
did-
point.
Yeah, it was like we were approaching kind of that peak, like that point where superhero movies really started to get into mainstream. And I think where they really hit home was that movies like The Dark Knight and Iron Man were really heavily based in a version of reality that we can connect to.
Yeah.
They're very grounded. They're very, as much as the superheroes themselves are very fantastical, they're made to feel very real. And so I think that made it a lot more accessible for people. And especially nowadays, if you tried to take like a Marvel movie of a recent year and tried to make that the start of the MCU, you would have had a lot of problems, because those just assume that they're now in this much wackier world. But what makes them work is that there's a whole foundation building up that strange, wacky world that they live in.
They slowly like increase the wackiness over time.
Yeah, I mean,
versus,
Guardians.
like,
Guardians, I'm like, they're about to lose me. Then I saw it and I'm like, this is freaking brilliant. And so they kept
Guardians was my first MCU theater experience.
Oh,
Wow.
wow.
Yeah, because like I mean like when I was in high school, like because the Avengers came out when I was a freshman in high school, so like, and like I like all my friends were like talking about it, I'm just like, oh, like I might actually want to go see this, and I never got the chance to.
That sucks.
Wow.
And then so like I never jumped on the Marvel train, and then like when the first Guardians came out, one of my friends was like, Nick, do you want to go see Guardians of the Galaxy with me? And I'm like, what's that? And all he had to tell me was, it's like Star Wars. That was enough to sell me.
Wow. All right.
Like that was enough to sell me on going to see Guardians, and I loved it. Right. And like, and I still hadn't like totally jumped on the superhero train.
That seems so surprising.
I know,
considering who
it's-
you are now.
A lot of people are shocked that it took me so long, but I think the movie that really got me invested was Doctor Strange. And
That's a good movie.
That
though.
came out when I was in college. And then like after Doctor Strange, I'm just like, okay, I need to go watch all of these other movies so I can understand what's going. Because I also saw Civil War in theaters with a friend, and I didn't have a clue what was happening.
Oh, yeah.
And so I kind of like gave up a little bit, but then I saw Doctor Strange with my younger sister at the Ultra screen at the Marcus Theaters, which I was
Oakdale?
in Oakdale.
Okay, yeah.
So I was so stunned by it that I'm just like, I need to like dive more into this. And I did, and it was like, and it just, and yeah, Doctor Strange, and then especially when one of my friends for my 20th birthday got us ticket to the premiere of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. And that was like, Guardians 2, I would say, was really the first Guardians was my introduction. The second Guardians was like my springboard that got me into like all of it.
Yeah. I mean, I had seen, I'm pretty sure I saw the first Iron Man movie on DVD after The Incredible Hulk came out. I think Iron Man 2.
Which you still haven't seen.
I've still not seen, which is why I'm excited that we're doing this, actually.
That's gonna be
For
great.
some reason too.
Because that next episode, I'm actually going to have to like pay attention. And so in this one I saw on DVD, I've never seen The Incredible Hulk, but my first theater experience was Iron Man 2. And I did see Avengers, I think twice at least when I was in high school. And it was like a phenomenon. Like everyone went nuts over this thing.
I knew the Avengers was a big deal, but like, and then when I watch it, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I got it.
It's just really fascinating. Like at least with me. So me and my dad have like gone and seen comic book movies from. So I started with the old X-Men movies. So like
those are pretty good.
Those are pretty good. Like that was the thing that kind of
Yeah,
got like
I've
me
seen those.
started as a
Yeah.
kid, where it's like, oh, like superhero movies can be pretty cool.
I can't wait to get to
and then like we
those.
winded up getting into eventually like Iron Man was just like, I don't know, I'm not sure, I've never heard of this guy before, but let's go see it. And like ever since then, we've gone and seen like all of them that we can at least. I mean, besides the most recent phase. But
Listeners and viewers, this has turned into us gushing about why we love Marvel,
but
which is kind of the whole point of this anyway.
well, one of the things that like I remember very specifically though, for me, I was in college when Avengers came out, but like we had built up, we had saw like all of them besides Hulk in theaters, and my dad was like, okay, I'm gonna, because like my family's from Wisconsin, but I live in Minnesota. My dad's like, okay, I'm gonna come, like you'll take a break from like your finals week and go see Avengers, and then go back to studying.
I did a very.
And it was just such a nice break that we went and like saw it in like the ultra screen or whatever.
You know,
and
I
it
did
was
something.
It was amazing.
I did
experience.
something very similar for Avengers: Infinity War. So I'm sure I've told you guys this story, but when I was in, so it was So Avengers: Infinity War came out like late April 2018. So I was like, it was like toward the end of my junior year of college, and I was in this. I was a math ed major, and I was in this class called Abstract Algebra, which I was not a huge. I could not understand what was going on in that class, and it was like 2 weeks before finals, and my friend Josh and I had tickets to go see the Thursday night showing of Avengers: Infinity War, and like the week before we went to go see it, he had to back out because there was like something came up. And I'm like, so when are we going to go see it? And he's like, why don't we go see it Friday afternoon? Let's shoot for like 1 o'clock. And I'm just like, oh, I have abstract algebra on Fridays at 1 o'clock. I'm not doing so well in this class. Yeah, let's go see Avengers. So it was the one time I skipped that class. But I mean, like, I knew I was failing. I knew I was going to fail it because you had to get like a C or better to pass. And I was like at a C minus. And I was like, there's no way. I did eventually make up for it. Like, obviously I graduated college and whatnot.
Yeah.
So I did make up for it. But I just, that's like one of my most vivid memories from college. It's like, I skipped abstract algebra, a class that I was not doing well in. So I could go see Avengers.
Yeah, and I largely, at least on mine, I grew up with the MCU, and so I like to think of the MCU as my generation's Star Wars moment. So when your friend described it as Star Wars, that hit a chord with me because I feel like that's, to us at least, maybe not you.
Yeah, you old fart.
To us at least. I kid. You're pretty close.
We love you, John.
Actually,
I saw this when I was in high school. Come on.
Yeah, it's close enough. Yeah. So I mean, for us at least, it really felt like a Star Wars moment of this is something huge that's never been done before.
I think Avengers hit that more.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, in general, the MCU.
yeah.
but yeah.
Like Avengers, and like obviously we'll get to this when we get to it. But Avengers is when we realized
It's when it hit mainstream.
It's when the world realized it was possible for the MCU to become what it became.
Yeah. Honestly, I really see Phase 1 as very much of like a test for what would become the full Infinity Saga.
I think that, and like I haven't watched Phase 1 movies in quite a while. I have a feeling I'm gonna like them a lot better now. Like I think I'm gonna have a more positive and a more appreciate perspective. Like with the first Iron Man movie, for example, right? Like it wasn't a movie I necessarily grew up with, right? And I watched it a couple times, like once, like I could, like just for the sake of rewatching the MCU, but also like even like I came onto this one. The first time I watched Iron Man was like when we were already in like essentially phase 3 of the MCU. So I was really late to the game.
Okay.
Yeah.
But and you know, like whenever I would like rank the MCU like in my own time, this movie was actually pretty low. Just because some of the newer stuff I liked more. And one of the reasons I wanted to rewatch it was so I could like, you know, see how much more I would appreciate it now than I did back then. So watching it on Friday, I was like, all right, so I'm going to watch this again. Let's see what happens. And I was like, this is a lot better than I remember. Like I loved watching it this time around.
Yeah. And so interestingly for me, I love this movie in the sense that it really kind of sparked my love for the whole thing. And I'm kind of glad that I got to see it through pretty much start to finish. Watching it again, it wasn't quite as magical to me as I remember it being. And I think a lot of that is just because there's now so much that sits on top of this one movie. That you don't really start to see the Marvel, quote unquote, the MCU formula. There are certain aspects of it that establishes like a shallow villain that has, you know, really big plans and is
He's greedy.
Yeah, is greedy and is not super well characterized on an emotional level or a motivational level. So it has that right. But when I look back at this film and I compare it to Iron Man 2, right? This film has its own sort of distinct personality. And you get to Iron Man 2 and you really see the Marvel formula that comes out of that. I don't know what it is about. Maybe it's the way they do the effects, or it's the way that things are written, or the way that the story is structured. It strikes me as Iron Man 2 strikes me as much more comparable in tone to the rest of the MCU than this first one was.
I don't know if I'd say Iron Man 2 was the best example
I think it's
of the
first,
Marvel formula.
but I think it's the first one.
Okay, I can give you first one, but I definitely not the best example.
Because I've gone through and I've watched phase 1, except for the Hulk, front to back, before. And when I go from Iron Man 1 and I put in Iron Man 2 right after that, basically, not marathoning it, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
When I go from Iron Man 1 to Iron Man 2, Iron Man 1 really feels like its own film. And then you get to Iron Man 2 and the casting of Don Cheadle aside, to recast from Terrence Howard for Rhodey, there is something distinctly different about the tone of the Iron Man 2 film that matches with the rest of the MCU.
I think part of that too, kind of like building on your point a little bit, but like, you know, the thing that I think one reason that people love this movie so much is because it doesn't it's not dependent on what came before it.
Yeah.
Because this was the thing that came before it all.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you want to watch the MCU, you really have to watch the first Iron Man movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But okay. Anyway, I was just wondering, kind of like, what do you think of like the overall like plot and the characters? Like, I feel like the reason that this movie is so highly regarded is like the charisma that comes from RDJ.
Oh yeah,
Like
100%.
his character is so
he carries the movie,
Yeah.
as he should, as the main character.
The thing that I find interesting is like also is that other movies I think would have taken just the beginning part, right? Like him escaping the cave. Like that could have been an entire movie just in itself.
Yeah.
But I feel like they're just like, no, we want to go one step further and see like what he does now that he's like changed because of that event.
Yeah, it's
And like how does he actually embody it, and does he like stand up for what he believes in?
that's
and, like,
true. Yeah, like him being in that cave, like that could have been the whole movie.
Yeah.
Easy. But I think it was a very bold and a bold decision that paid off to go even further with that.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
I would say though, like I understand like not the very strong villain, but I don't think that's what this movie was about. I think it was like Tony's journey was the
establishing.
concept.
Yeah, it was about establishing Iron Man.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that like is very solid about why I liked Marvel so much, like through phase 1 and whatnot, is they focus so much on character.
Mhm.
And that's like
Yes.
what they're
Yes.
really trying to establish. Not like, oh, how many villains can we throw in? Like, what effects can we do? And like all this. No, it's like we just want to establish like you understand who Iron Man is.
Yeah.
And
Well,
like,
and yeah,
yeah.
they clearly cared, and you know, I'm sure they had plans for what was going to happen after this movie if it was successful. And so I think to service that, they realized they needed to make the Tony Stark character as strong as possible. And so it helps to have an actor who, in a way, doesn't have to act.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm projecting a little bit, because I've, of course, disclaimer, I don't know Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah. But like you can tell from like interviews and stuff. Like
yeah,
kind
you can
of
tell from
maybe
his
what
interviews. You can tell from the way that at least when he knows when he knows that he's in public, he has a very similar way of conducting
He's
himself.
very charismatic.
Yeah. I think if you like put a camera just on him in a casual environment, that's just kind of what comes out.
Like this.
Yes. You didn't know I was Tony Stark, did you? No.
Hey man, I've had people tell me that I look like Robert Downey Jr.
I could kind of see it. Yeah.
I've definitely trimmed my beard to look like Tony Stark's beard. And I've worn that look to weddings. And
That
it
works.
looks
Yeah.
actually really funny story. So, about 3 years ago, I was at a Halloween party, and me and my girlfriend at the time went as Tony Stark and Pepper Potts.
Yeah.
and I went to Great Clips that day and showed them a picture of Robert Downey Jr. I'm like, replicate this look. and she did. It looked awesome.
Wow.
Like she trimmed the beard and everything. It looked just like him. And I wasn't wearing like an Iron Man suit, but it was like Tony Stark. Like I was in like basically like a black suit with like a casual like black shirt and whatnot.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And underneath, my dad gave me this camp lamp with a hook, and I was wearing like a tank top like underneath. I just hung the lamp off the neckline and turned the lamp on so it looked like an arc reactor was glowing
That's
through.
really cool. That's really cool.
It was it was awesome. It was a like I remember like, and I walk in and like I'm talking to and one of the I was talking to one of the guests. He's just like he's like, oh hey Nick, how you doing? And he looks at my chest. He's just like, oh my gosh, you're Tony Stark.
Yep, he knows
Right away, got it.
right off the bat.
But I think what you're kind of getting at is the thing there wasn't much for the character of Tony Stark like in the comics, as far as I know. And like after this movie came out, like they changed the comics to fit more to the movie because he did such a good job with it. Like he made it such a more interesting character.
Yeah, they did that too with like Nick Fury, I think too.
Actually,
I think that was I think that was a legal thing.
The comics went so far as like because Nick Fury was supposed to be like a white guy,
Yeah,
and then
it was
later on they're
it
just
was
like,
an alternate universe that had him as a black guy, and it looked exactly like Samuel.
no,
Jackson.
they purposely made him look
Yeah,
like
they
Sam
actually
Jackson.
there's like a licensing for his likeness, I think.
Yeah.
One thing I want to bring up, and this is actually kind of a disappointment, not for the movie itself, but how they carry this movie on into the MCU, and that is the character of Yinsen, the doctor who helps him who saves his life firstly, and then also assists him in the cave to escape. And there was some major disappointment because the only other time he appears is in Iron Man 3 in a flashback, and he gets kind of brushed off by Tony. But I was really hoping that at some point, as they're taking Tony on this hero's journey through the Infinity Saga, that they would call back to some of these earlier people who were really the catalyst for his transformation. And they never really did, which to me is a huge disappointment. It's like they did all this work to build up his character and then they stumbled at the finish line, because across 20-something movies, it helps to remind us every now and then. You don't have to do it all the time because then it gets preachy, right? But bringing back the incident at one point, because his line of like, don't waste your life, carries Tony's character through the whole thing.
Well, and he's the one who really believed in him.
Yes.
Because like he saw like his character when they're in the cave is like, oh, I saw you like when you were giving these like talks and stuff, and I went to them and I still kind of like understood what you were. And it's like, I wouldn't even be able to have stood if I was that drunk or whatever. Like he understands his flaws, but he still loved him anyway and wanted to help him to escape from the cave.
Yeah. So I think the character of Vincent is amazing in this movie because it's his selflessness and almost his moral instruction that kind of guides Tony's change in heart. And I find it interesting that by the time this Iron Man 2 rolls around and he's kind of, it's assumed that he's sort of completed his mission, eradicating his weapons, that he kind of becomes aimless again. And so the line of like Winston saying like, don't waste your life, strikes me as like the actual foundation for his character. So when he's speaking from the heart later and saying, I shouldn't be alive unless it was for a reason, I think he's really reminded of Vincent, or at least in a traumatic experience like that, any person would be reminded of that one light in the darkness. And so the fact that he never calls back to that again in the MCU, I think they did a poor job carrying forward some of the better parts of Phase 1 into the rest of the story.
But I think one thing goes to show is, sorry. So like he definitely has a transformation at the point, but there's still a lot to be had, because like you can see like the way in which, even though he's inventing the stuff that he's like, oh, I'm going to solve this problem.
He's still cocky.
He is so cocky about it. Like you can tell exactly when he tries out the first, like, what is it? The Mark II?
Yes.
Where he like goes flying and it's like, but the one quote, you have to learn to run before you can walk. I'm like, what does that even mean?
It's not how it works.
Like, are you kidding?
That's not how the Force works.
But the thing is, like, he goes out and like throws himself at whatever this is because he's so cocky that he doesn't think he can lose.
Yeah, this movie is the journey of his spirit. It's the conversion of his spirit. And I think every film after that he plays a major part in, there is some arc about that deals with another one of his character flaws. And so in the second one, it's largely about his unresolved father issues, basically.
Because in this one, it was about like he used to be like a war profiteer.
Yes.
And then he realized, oh, like these are actually hurting people. Let's not do that.
Well, and let's be clear that the reason he shuts down weapons manufacturing is because those weapons are making it into terrorists' hands.
Well, yes.
And so I think if they were, to him, it's less important necessarily that they're still being sold to the military than it is that they happen to be in the wrong hands at any given moment.
Yeah.
And so I think once he resolves that, that's why, because honestly, if he had shut down weapons manufacturing after that completely, there wouldn't be any more about his company. Like the whole thing would tank. There's no reason.
Unless he somehow got like the arc reactor to have like energy, he could. But like, yeah, it would definitely, it would take a long time to transition to something different.
Yes.
But what am I? Sorry.
He blanked. His arc reactor ran out.
But I think it's more so just like him, like before the incident, he almost like runs on autopilot. Like he is so much of the world of just like, I want all the money, I want all the power, I want all the
all the girls,
and it's just so worldly that it has to like take something ginormous to like get him out of that mindset.
Yeah.
And that he finally like, I think comes to realization of like taking responsibility for what he's done.
I'm going to pull another Jensen line. You're a man that has everything and nothing.
Yeah.
I'm telling you.
And Tony, even like in his first press conference when he comes back, he talks about accountability.
Yeah.
Like, which is everything you just said.
Well, and he hints at his not being able to say goodbye to his father, and how that affected his ability to understand his work, the implications of his work. So yeah, I like that it establishes his character and it shows the conversion of his intention. But we're not out of the woods yet because he is such a flawed character that there are many, many, many things.
We've got a long ways to go with Tony Stark.
Yeah. Basically the Infinity Saga is Tony Stark's therapy. And so
you're not wrong.
Iron Man 1, just like I
is just
am
breaking the
a playboy,
ice.
and Iron Man 2 is just like, really, tell me more. And so it just keeps going, and every movie addresses a little more about his character, like first Avengers movie, his ability to work on a team, right? Iron Man 2 does that a little bit, but it's really hinted at in Avengers.
Oh yeah.
Especially with people he disagrees with. Iron Man 3 is very much about
his PTSD.
And his overprotectiveness.
Yep.
And he's trying to compensate also for what he saw.
Which is like even further shown in Age of Ultron.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there is something that like is hinted at here is like he runs full on with like anything that like I think he above all wants control.
Yes.
I think is like in general his biggest flaw.
And it wasn't until like, and obviously like we'll dig more into this when we get there, but like it wasn't until the very end of Avengers Infinity War, in the last like 2 minutes of the movie, when he realized that it was out of his, that the things really were out of his control.
Yeah.
And then in Endgame, he gives up, but then realizes, I mean, like, I can help solve the problem and I can find a way to help fix things. But he went in knowing this might not go the way I want it to.
Yeah.
I think like on a side note too of like with Jensen, I think one thing that it goes to show, it's like Tony Stark may have like the power and the money, but I think like his real asset is like the people around him that care for him.
Yes.
Because like, for instance, like I think maybe an unsung person is Pepper Potts really cares for him, even though like he doesn't seem to care that much for her other than like, you're a really good assistant.
He clearly, yeah. Like,
and then like, I think he
clearly
after his
does.
change,
Yeah.
he's like, oh, actually, you know what? Like, I do see her being something more in my life, and like that she has supported me through this. And it's just, I don't know. I think their characters are really good. And later you find out like Happy is also similar.
Yeah. You do make a good point about his influences, right? And about how those affect his character's evolution through the whole thing.
Peter Parker is a big one too.
Yeah. That actually makes him essentially want to be a father.
Can't wait till that part.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
Oh, it's going to be so good. There's so much to talk about with this character that I'm excited to get to down the line.
We'll have plenty more time.
But I think there is one thing to say that's like, this is a pre-Disney movie.
Yes.
Yes.
Like, and it definitely feels like more adult than
There
I
is
think
a
some of the
specific
later
scene at the
ones.
very beginning
Yeah.
where that's not,
But
I say that,
it
but
goes
then
to show his flaws.
yes.
Well, and I think when I'm talking about Iron Man 2 being the first movie that is distinctly Marvel in tone, I think really you might have just hit it on the head. Where as soon as when was the Disney acquisition?
2011, I think it was.
2011.
Because they bought Marvel before they bought Lucasfilm.
And then Iron Man 2 was when? Was that
2010.
2010. Okay,
So I think it was either Thor or the first Avenger, like the first Captain America, where Disney like
takes over.
Yeah.
Because like even the tone, like there are multiple scenes in this movie that could be like out of a horror movie. Like
Yes.
in the way of how it was
yeah.
filmed in certain instances.
When the
Like-
Ironmonger suit like
Yeah.
lights up, I'm like, oh, this is straight up out of a horror movie.
and
right
like
here.
I don't think like I think I would agree with like I would not show this to little kids.
No.
no, gosh,
Like,
no.
like it is not that is not the intended audience.
Well, last little nugget before we do our scores. One other way I relate to Iron Man, Robert Downey Jr. and I share a birthday.
Oh.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
I share
That's
a birthday
cool.
with Robert Downey Jr., the late Heath Ledger,
Wow.
and James Roday from Psych.
Of course.
How fitting is that?
Wow.
That makes sense.
I'll
Oh,
take
goodness.
it too.
So, final thoughts and scores.
Well, I'm going to give this a 94.
Okay.
That, like, again, it's a lot better than, like, I loved it. I appreciated it more now than I did previous times watching it. And, like, it just makes me really excited to, like, go through this retrospective of the MCU and really, like watch the movies knowing what's currently happening in the multiverse saga.
Mhm.
All right. So, for me, this is really interesting. If you gave me a movie series and you like something that had never been done before at this point and said this is going to be 20 plus movies long and we need a solid foundation, and then you showed me Iron Man, like this is what they picked, I'd be like, all right, yeah, the Iron Man movie is like the best foundation possible that they probably could have figured out for the MCU. It is a rock solid blockbuster kind of origin story. Even though I don't think it's the perfect origin story, I think it's the perfect one for the MCU. And it gave kind of this entryway into that world with a character who in a lot of ways is very relatable and struggles with a lot of character flaws. That being said, it's really cool. The effects on it are amazing and something that
They hold up. The special effects hold up really
up
well.
spectacularly.
15 years later, like,
and in a lot of
Yeah.
ways, I think the work they did there, because they filmed real stuff for reference in terms of like making a real suit. They filmed it for reference that they could do better with the CG. And I think the effects still are unparalleled. And there are just some cool freaking moments in this movie. So all that being said, I'm going to give it, an 85.
okay.
Yeah.
It's just funny because like, okay, I wasn't sure quite what the score I wanted to, but I think over like our discussion, I'd kind of thought about it. The thing is, okay, there's definitely a lot of nostalgia. I think overall it is a very solid film, and I do think there is some unique aspects to it. But like overall, like there is some things that could still be worked on. So it's like it'd be really hard for me to give like extremely high score. Like it's not
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings, but
We'll get to
but
those
it is
eventually.
really really good. So I think I'm gonna go with 89.
Okay.
All right. And what does that bring us out to, Nick?
Gives us a final score of 89.
And a third.
89 and third, but we're rounding to 89.
Very good.
I think
Solid.
that is a solid.
That's
score
a
for that
solid
one.
score for this movie.
That's a really solid score. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you guys for really bringing it out for the first episode here. It's awesome to finally have the opportunity to just like guilt-free talk about.
gush about Marvel.
We're not like breaking apart from an episode and going on a half-hour tangent to talk about the MCU.
Which
and
that
what's
might,
happening.
I mean, that could still happen.
It still kind of low-key happens in this episode.
Well, it's
Low-key.
funny at the beginning. We were talking about other.
Yeah. Well, but we have it's kind of interesting because we could as we move forward in this series, right? We could just try to stick specifically with the content of the movie, but it's hard to talk about any of these without also talking about how they fit into the big picture and about how things do or do not carry forward or are set up beforehand. Obviously that doesn't happen with this movie because there's no prequel.
There's no predecessor. Yeah.
This story is told kind of in isolation, and it helps to set up everything that comes after with S.H.I.E.L.D., the Avengers, and a couple other things.
And just the entire Infinity Saga.
Yeah, pretty much. We could try to isolate as much as possible. I don't see it happening as long as we're not we spent quite a bit of time talking about Guardians. This almost became the Guardians episode. But obviously we'll talk more about Guardians in a few months, probably.
Oh, yeah.
And so I look forward to that. So thank you, both of you, for bringing your A game on this. And thank you, everyone, viewers, potentially, and also listeners, for tuning into this episode of the Genesius podcast. If you enjoy our content, if you want to hear more, if you want more episodes of this, please subscribe. Let us know that you liked it. You can find us on most podcasting platforms: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, I think Google too.
Yep,
and
Google.
I'm blanking. So pretty much anything.
Yeah.
Please also rate and review us on whatever podcasting platform you're using. Really appreciate it.
Preferably a 5-star.
Yeah, we would like 5.
I mean, be
Five
honest,
out of five.
Be honest when you're rating us, but like, I hope we are 5-star quality.
I mean, I'm okay with 89 out of 100.
All right, yeah,
That's
I'll take
fine
it.
too.
If
It's a
they
4.5.
if they just say 2-star, it was a podcast I've listened to, I'd be like, I.
I mean, they could also just be review bombing us.
That's a good point.
Don't review bomb us, please.
Please don't. Yeah. So there's that.
And if there is a movie or a franchise that you want us to talk about on Genesius, if there's any episode ideas related to movies or feedback to make our show better, or if you need prayers and you specifically want us to give you a prayer shout out here on the show, send us an email at genesiuspodcast@gmail.com. That's GENESIUS podcast@gmail.com. Genesius with a U. If you know one of us three personally and you want to be a guest on our show, reach out to one of us, like direct message, and let us know what you want to talk about. We've had a couple people reach out to us already saying I want to talk about this movie with you guys.
Oh, like for the MCU?
MCU and Star Wars.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, I think I showed you guys. That
Bring
email.
it on.
Yeah,
We got 4 microphones. It would be hard to video it. We'll have to figure that out.
yeah. Well, this is very experimental. What's going on
I
right
feel like
now?
my dad is. It would be hard to video it. Sorry, Dad.
But but if you want to come on the show and hang out with us and talk movies or movie related thing with us, use the email address that I mentioned earlier, genesiuspodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah, and last but not least, please spread the word about our show by sharing it on social media or by word of mouth. Make sure you are telling whoever you are next to about us.
Are we going to say that every time?
Yes.
Right at this very moment.
Hey, Nick, have you heard about the Genesius podcast?
You know I have.
Yeah. I beat you to it this time.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah. Last week was your turn. Now it's mine.
Okay, at your family dinner, at work, or on a date night.
At the bathroom. Just like
you made it weird.
See somebody in the
two guys at a urinal. Have you heard about the Genesius podcast? You know, it's that easy.
The number, John, you can personally test this, but the number of times we are at some young adult thing, I'm advertising and advertising. It's not like, because I mean, I'm social media free. There's no other way to advertise.
When they do the round
You're
table,
definitely doing the word of mouth one.
Oh yeah.
they're doing the round table. You're like, I host a podcast, Genesius podcast, genesius@gmail.com.
I do that sometimes, actually.
Well, in that case, wherever you are, make sure to tell them about us, and more importantly, pray for us as we keep making this show.
Yeah, like we are praying for you, please also pray for us.
Yes, we would appreciate that.
Any prayer intentions?
You know,
That are different than the one that we just did. Yeah, I think you could say people are struggling with addictions, like or
who struggle with addictions and who struggle with purpose.
yeah.
Yeah.
And just for conversion in general. Like I know there are some people who like you said are struggling with an addiction or struggling with a sense of purpose. But obviously like I mean it's cliche to say that like God is the answer to everything. But like he really is. And it's not always the way you expect it. Actually, more often than not, it's not the way you expect it. But he's never really like direct with you. Well, in some cases he might be, but most of the time he's not. But just prayers for those for conversion, that people will turn to him for direction and guidance and just ways to kick addictions right squarely in the behind.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Nick, do you want to lead us in prayer?
I'd be happy to.
I promise to do it next time.
In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen. Heavenly Father, we thank you for bringing us together today to talk about you and to talk about the impact you've had on our culture, whether it be, I guess in the specific case for this podcast, just talk about how you speak to us through the movies we watch, in whatever way you might be speaking to us. I'd like to offer of a special intention for all those who are struggling with addiction and a sense of purpose, that they may turn to you for guidance. And so that, and I pray that those who convert and turn to you, that they may listen to you and they may surrender their control, that they may follow your word and come closer to you by being the very best and most authentic versions of themselves. And especially for those struggling with addiction, we turn to one of your archangels as we pray. Saint Michael, the archangel, defend us in battle. Be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. And do thou, Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, thrust into hell Satan and all evil spirits who prowl about the world, seeking the ruin of souls. Amen. Saint Genesius, pray for us. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy
Have
Spirit.
we done the St. Michael prayer on the podcast?
I think this is a show first.
Yeah, that is a show first.
I thought it was fitting
Yeah, absolutely.
for this movie. It'll come back
Yeah.
for sure.
All right.
Anyway, so John, Seth, as always, thank you for joining me today.
As always.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Nick.
hosting.
Love having you guys on the show. Love that three of us can do this. And listeners, thank you for tuning in. Whether you are listening or potentially watching us on the YouTube. I've
never heard it said that way before.
I was being silly.
The tube of
I know.
you.
The tube of you. Oh, crap. That's even better. The two of you.
Let me just like a la Office Jim face at the camera.
Anyway, thank you guys for tuning back in with us. And until next time, we are the Genesius guys. I'm Nick.
Filling in for Kyle, I'm Seth.
And I'm John.
And this is the Genesius podcast. God bless everyone.
And guys, I think I should take us out with the most important line of the movie here.
Tony Stark was able to build this in a cave with a box of scraps.
I love that these episodes are just us jamming out now at the end. This is great.
I think that line was
I still can't believe you got those sound bites.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
Where did you get those?
A magician never reveals his secrets.
But I do think that like